What's up, guys? Ian here, coach of your Ladner Lanturn, bringing you guys our Week 8 match, taking on my good pal Jed, aka Bionic Soup, and the Adelaide Overheat. Jed and I are really good friends. We go way back, almost all the way back, all the way back to UPBA Season 1, which was my first ever draft league. Yeah, so Jed and I have played many times before. If you're curious about any of those, I've uploaded almost all of them. I think there are only a couple that I haven't uploaded just because we've been in so many leagues together. Um, yeah, I have a very commanding lead in the head-to-head. Actually, we recorded a series together as well called Rambat Rivals. If you're curious about just regular games, I seem to have just like crazy luck against Jed. I really just seem to have crazy luck against Jed. It feels like every time we play, he gets the short end of the straw in some way somehow, right? Um, it's really just how it feels. After he beat me in our first ever match, I think he's only taken me down maybe twice since then, once or twice since our first ever match. And I think I have like 11 or 12 wins or something. So we'll see how this one goes. The team that he could have brought was Z Tapu Koko, Mamoswine, Bronzong, Z Cofagrigus, Skuntank, Ninetales, Sceptile, Mega Blastoise, Halucha, Latias, Kangaskhan, or Z Masquerain. By the way, just because his record's bad does not mean that he's bad. He took over for a team and has had next to no chance at playoffs, just based on how the games have been going up to this point. But yeah, so with that in mind, I was not expecting the Ninetales, or at least I should say I was hoping that I wouldn't have to deal with Ninetales, and we see it on our screen. So unfortunately, I'm already on the back foot, kind of, at team preview, just because this Mon it tears my team apart, and I didn't bring the Mega Charizard X, which would have been a solid check to it. So I'm very sad that I opted to switch things up and not bring the Mega Charizard X, although I'm not sure what role my Zard would have fulfilled in this game. Yeah, the Cofagrigus and the Bronzong, the Mamoswine, the Mega Blastoise, and the Tapu Koko, I was all expecting all of those. Um, I'm expecting the Mega Blastoise to have Aura Sphere right off the bat. I know that's a thing for sure that it's going to have. Not entirely sure what the rest of his build's going to be, although we could anticipate that it's going to be a relatively physically defensive Cofagrigus as an Excadrill Trek. But again, not really sure. So I'm actually just going to lead off with Zapdos here. So initially my plan was going to be to lead Nidoking, and that's why I was running Taunt on this set. But we don't see the Masquerain, and so my idea was kind of just to shut down a Web's lead right off the bat. I don't even think that he would have led Masquerain against this team necessarily unless he was expecting a Ferrothorn lead, because he knows how often I like to lead Zapdos. Oh, excuse me. Just going to take a swig here. There we go. Clear up the throat a little bit. So I'm just going to leave with the Zapdos. And we get a nice lead matchup here against the Bronzong. So I wasn't really sure what to expect, but based on that damage, I'm still not really sure. This is not a defensive Bronzong at all by that damage. This is very offensive Trick Room. So already I'm scared shitless. Essentially, I'm scared shitless by this Bronzong. But the good news is my Zapdos doesn't really do much in this game anymore. He didn't bring the Unburdened Core. I brought this Zapdos set with Charty. It was EV'd for specific things. I'd EV'd it specifically to take +2 Stone Edge from Halucha with the Charty Berry, and I was outspeeding something in particular, and I had EV'd it to Oko Halucha with my attack investment and whatnot. So it's a very specific Zapdos set that I brought that is completely wasted because none of the Pokemon that it's specifically EV for show up. But the Bronzong's still here, so I'm not really sure what he wants to hit me with. Maybe like a Psychic or a Future Sight or something. So I realistically was just going to go for the Discharge here, but we see the Rock Slide damage there, and that's interesting that he's bringing Rock Slide. He's prepped for the Zapdos, that's for sure. Another Discharge will take this out. Rock Slide's actually doing a hefty amount of damage. Based on that damage, he's like Brave or Adamant or something. Some form of plus attack nature, as well as being max attack. So this is a very offensive, physically offensive Bronzong, it looks like to me. And so I'm not gonna fuck with that. I'm just gonna roost here. on this rock slide, get up to as much health as I possibly can, and he's going to miss a rock slide on my other roost. So I was just trying to stall out Trick Room turns because I know that my Nidoking can tank a rock slide really easily, and that's what he's going to want to go for since he's seen the damage output that it can go for, that it can do. So my Nidoking can easily take that. He actually crits me. This may or may not matter later into the game based on certain rolls against other Pokemon, but it shouldn't be a huge deal unless I have to 1v1 the Mamoswine with my Nidoking. I do have Shadow Ball specifically for this, and I think he's just ready to give up his Bronzong now. He didn't really gain anything from this besides burning my Charty because, except for like a tiny little bit of damage on Nidoking. Like essentially he gave up Bronzong for almost free, except getting rid of my Charty, which isn't useful. I'm not gonna imagine that anything else is carrying a rock move except potentially Mamo. Nothing else should be carrying a rock move on it. So that's fairly irrelevant, and also it means that my Zapdos actually takes knockoffs from a Mamoswine better. So it's just the damage on Nidoking, realistically, but we get the Shadow Ball kill with Nidoking, our kill leader for the season. He's going to bring out Mamoswine, which obviously threatens me out, and I get to bring in Golisopod on an Amnesia, and I am... once again, I'm scared out of my mind. These sets that Jed's bringing this game are baffling to me. This Amnesia, I've actually seen him use this set before, but it didn't click with me for a second until the second time that he brings in Mamoswine here. But I am just going to go for the first impression. I figure my best bet is actually probably to just go for damage here, and so that's what I'm going to do. And we're going to do a decent chunk to the Blastoise, just to be about max HP. Just your standard max HP, max special attack Blastoise is kind of what I'm getting from that damage. I'm not overly pleased with the damage, but chip against Blastoise is important for Excadrill to be able to kill it later, so I was also okay with that. Getting a spike up at any point also might have been helpful. I would love chip on the Koko. I would love more chip on the Mamo, more chip on the Blastoise, etc. I can't spin block, but I might be able to punish the Blastoise spinning by going into Ferrothorn and him taking Iron Barbs as well, which would all be good chip and would lead to a potential late game Excadrill sweep. I need chip on the Cofagrigus and the Blastoise, and then Excadrill sweeps. That's pretty much it. Adamant, so I kind of just power through like basically everything there. I am just going to switch out into my Abomasnow, though. It was my dedicated Blastoise check, as he's going to go into the Tapu Koko. Tiny little bit regretting not bringing Snow Warning now, because I do need that little bit of extra chip, but it's fine because my mons are going to be taking chip now too, which is great. Now, Koko's in. I figure best thing you can go for is an HP Fire or something, or U-turn actually, because I'm Assault Vest. But he's going to go for Brave Bird, and it does a trillion, and my Earthquake does next to nothing. So he's relatively bulky, and Ice Shard isn't going to be able to take him out from this range because I'm extremely Spit F and have no attack investment. And he's basically figured that out at this point. This Abomasnow is essentially fodder now. I was expecting some sort of mixed Koko variant with Wild Charge potentially for my Slowking, but I wasn't necessarily thinking that he was going to be Brave Bird. This actually threw me off a little bit because I expected this to have Grass Knot. I really expected it to have Grass Knot for Hippo. I'm not sure if his plan was just to go into Blastoise every single time on Hippo, or set up on it with Mamoswine or something like that, but if I was a toxic Hippo, then I could have shut this whole team down. Hippo actually had an amazing matchup against the mons that he brought. Just a really stally Hippo could have just beaten almost everything here by itself, so I'm a little bit regretting not bringing the Hippo, which I was kind of against because of Blastoise, but then I had two plans for Blastoise, so I could have brought Hippo instead of, like, the Zapdos set that I brought. I probably could have brought Hippo instead, and it would have been fairly effective, just about as effective, I think. Either way, this Abomasnow is pretty much fodder. I'm just going to go to my Zapdos on the Koko. It's not really that useful, and then he shows the sub, which just scares the hell out of me even more. I know I can't break the sub. I could have stayed in with Abomasnow, and sacked it. I'm actually kind of surprised that he didn't just expect me to sack it. It was pretty low. It wasn't taking hits from anything in that range. So I'm a little bit shocked that he clicked sub here. His Koko actually could have just been gone, like, straight up. If I just clicked Earthquake, then I just click Ice Shard, and the Koko is not really going to do much to me in that case. Obviously, I've got the priority on the Abomasnow and the Golisopod. I've run Sucker Punch and Nidoking before, so he should be wary of that as well. And so, despite seeing what the set is now, I'm still a little bit shocked that he made that play. It was a good play. Like, don't get me wrong at all. It was a very good play. I'm just a little bit shocked that it happened post-game. I wasn't shocked at the time. I was like, oh, crap, just my life is falling apart. Realistically, I have to break the sub, so I'm just going to discharge here as he shows Z-move, which I thought might be Z-Nature's Madness, but is instead Z-Psych Up. I didn't even know that it got Psych Up, let alone that Z-Psych Up gave you full health. I mean, that's just, it's Z Heal Bell, but you get the stat boost. That's kind of nuts to me. And then he shows the Wild Charge, and he shows to be cool, well, not overly offensive. But now his Electric Terrain's gone, so he can't kill me with another one, and I'm going to make a godlike prediction and go for the Toxic against the Mem one here. This is kind of just a string of plays where we're going to find out what the Memo set is. He shows the rocks, shows lefties. I am not about having rocks on my side of the field when Glycepod's relatively important to take this on, and I just don't want the chip on anything really, so I'm going to put myself in a position where rocks are not on my side of the field, but he's going to start cursing, and we're going to see the entire set, I believe, this turn when he shows me Ice Shard, and I actually roosted. It looked like an unplay at the time because I was like, oh, I'm just going to roost for the extra 2 HP, the 2% or whatever, but then he clicked Ice Shard, and I was like, okay, well, I made the correct play then. So +2 Ice Shard is doing a buttload of damage to me, and then here I'm actually going to miscalculate a little bit. So I completely forgot he had leftovers. It looks to me like he's going to die to Toxic because he's taking 37% from Toxic, but he's actually going to be at 39% at the end of this turn because I can't touch him with my Zapdos. So my end goal is to make sure that rocks don't stay on my side of the field. So he's actually going to go for rocks hoping that that's what happens, and then he's going to live another turn, be able to Ice Shard me, weaken me as I go for the Defog. Overall, it's not going to matter all that much. Zapdos still 1v1 the Mamoswine fairly effectively, but it does mean my Zapdos is going to die to this Koko instead of being able to... I would probably click Discharge against it. As much as I would want to click... as much as I would love to click Toxic against it, I would probably Discharge just so that if I was healthy enough, I would just Discharge so that it can't like continuously get a sub up. And it clearly doesn't have recovery outside of the Z Psych Up. I think Roost might have been a little bit more beneficial to the set, but I can understand it for the memes. I've got quite a lot of setup on the team. I actually brought none of it this week, but I do have quite a lot of setup on the team. So he's actually just going to kill me here with the Wild Charge, which is probably the correct play. I did click Discharge there in case he clicked Sub. I calced it against the Nidoking. I do not die to Brave Bird, so I'm just going to go for the Fat Earth Power. I got really excited for a second as he switched into the Ninetales because I'm like, oh, bet this is the scariest thing to my team. And then he showed Air Balloon, and now panic ensues once again. I have absolutely nothing for this Ninetales, so I'm just going to go to Abomasnow here to sack it off as he shows Sub. Of all things, he shows Sub. Oh my god, this was just really scary. I don't even know what to say here. He's got Air Balloon and he's behind a Sub? Oh god. My entire team's slower than this Ninetales naturally. So my Excadrill is the only thing that'll outspeed because I'm Scarfed. But he's Air Balloon, so I can't even touch him without Iron Head, like just clicking Iron Head, which is obviously not going to kill this thing. Oh my god, like, I was just screaming. I was screaming, man. I can't even touch this with Abomasnow realistically, so I'm just going to go for the Ice Shard. Try and get damage on the sub at the very least before I die, and luckily for me, it actually pops the Air Balloon. I had no idea that the mechanic worked that way, neither did Jed. But apparently it's worked that way, like, since Air Balloon has been around, so... that's worthy to note. I mean, realistically, his Air Balloon being gone is such a huge thing for me to get rid of that Air Balloon. I basically need to put myself in a position where I can break his sub, get Excadrill in to just click Earthquake, and then hopefully be able to pressure him enough where he can't click sub again. That's the ideal situation at least, but to do that I have to go into my Glycepod here. So I'm going to go into Glycepod and click First Impression. Glycepod has little attack investment, but it still breaks it, and he's actually less offensive than I expected his Ninetales to be, but that's only because he's running Flamethrower rather than Fire Blast. Jed tends to typically run moves that are more accurate rather than less accurate because he's lost games to Leaf Storm misses and things like that. Yeah. So I thought that my Glycepod would be put in emergency exit range and I could get my Excadrill in, but now I still have to do that. I still have to play for that, but he can't be behind a sub. I would love to just click Spikes at some point, but I can't. I really can't. I have to click liquidation. It should break the sub even in Sun. It's really strong liquidation. So now the Sun is gone, and he is going to put me into emergency exit range and get the burn. Now that burn is a little bit yikes. Yeah, that burn's a little bit yikes. It's going to end up with my Excadrill in, and he's going to have to either sack the Ninetales. I believe with his investment, the Cofagrigus was actually potentially two-shot by my Excadrill as well, and the Blastoise is for sure. So essentially, he has to pick something to sack here to my Adamant Drill, and it's going to be the Ninetales, luckily, which means he has almost no way of beating my Ferrothorn now. Kofag comes in, and he's going to set up the Trick Room here. I was perfectly okay with that. I was really scared about a Will-O-Wisp, which is why I went into Gliscod, and then I scouted for damage a little bit there on the first impression, but I wanted to get a little bit of damage off before I just die to this Kofag. It's going to end up not mattering at all. And in fact, I should have gone for liquidation instead, predicting the nasty plot. Would have been a better play. I would have been able to weaken the Cofagrigus earlier, because I'm trying to get this Cofagrigus either in range of an Earthquake from Excadrill when Trick Room expires, or in range of a Shadow Ball from Nidoking when Trick Room expires. So my only play is to go into my Ferrothorn here. I'm going to try and weaken this with Leech Seed. He's going to crit me with the Hidden Power Fighting, but luckily I'm packing the Chople Berry for the Mega Blastoise. Make a little bit of a riskier play going for the Power Whip there rather than Gyro Ball, but I needed the guaranteed damage against the Kofag. Or sorry, I needed more chip, and so rather than the guaranteed damage, which was almost nothing because there's not much of a speed gap between these two, and he's going to be running 0 IVs Kofag anyways, Power Whip was just the better play. So I'm actually going to go for it again, as he still misses out on the Hidden Power Fighting KO. So I will go for the Gyro Ball this time, because I don't need any more chip than I'm at now. I actually lived that hit because I was super Spadef Ferrothorn to deal with Mega Blastoise. This obviously isn't a Mega Blastoise check anymore, so I have a couple ways of dealing with that. Essentially, what it's going to come down to is how the next couple turns play out here. So his Kofag is weakened to a point, and we've seen the entire set that I'm comfortable bringing in Nidoking, but I'm not comfortable bringing in Excadrill after this Ferrothorn dies and he gets a little bit of HP back. It looks to me like it's a roll that's not in my favor with Excadrill, depending on his investment on the Cofagrigus. And at that point, I think it might have been a 1-0 anyways, because the Blastoise definitely lives a hit if it comes in, and it could just Aura Sphere my Excadrill and kill me. So my better play is to just go Nidoking here, because Nidoking can still take on the Koko afterwards, and so I'm going to get Shadow Ball off on that. The Koko is going to come in. I know this can't kill me with a Brave Bird, so he's got to crit me here, and we'll see. If he crits me, then he might be able to kill me. It's actually still a roll if he crits me, just because of nothing in particular, actually. I'm not really running all that much bulk on my Nidoking. I think it's just 8 defense EVs, but he's going to do fairly pitiful damage with Brave Bird, actually. In the grand scheme of things, we're going to be able to pick off the Koko with Earth Power, and then Mega Blastoise is actually just going to drop to this the terrain boosted T-Bolt. I don't know if it would have dropped to T-Bolt outside of that, but I'm very glad that I'm rocking the T-Bolt rather than anything else, rather than Ice Beam. I think it was between T-Bolt and Ice Beam, or Shadow Ball and Ice Beam, one of those. But T-Bolt was very clutch in the end game there. So Nidoking actually picks up 4 kills. Zapdos gets a Toxic kill, Excadrill gets an Earthquake kill, and Nidoking gets the other 4, 2 Shadow Ball, an Earth Power, and a Thunderbolt. So Nidoking's actually now 15-3 in 5 games. Something crazy like that. Yeah, it's 15-3 in 5 games. It is second in the entire league in kills, but it's averaging 3 kills a game, which is the highest average kills per game in the league as well. So, got a lot to love about the Nidoking bring. It just seems to tear people apart in aABL for some reason. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it's most certainly the team MVP. I'll give it that much. With that win, we move ourselves to 7-1 plus 14. This is a really solid record. Shuckle King actually took an FF loss last week, so he's at 5-2. Aaron is at 6-1. Aaron's my final opponent of the season in week 10. And that'll probably be a meme match at that point. The way that the standings are bunched right now is that I'm at the top of the Blaze Conference by 1 win over Aaron, who's 6-1. And in 5th place, just outside of a playoff spot, is Zach and the Chicago Charizards, who actually plays Shuckle King this week. So if Zach loses this week, and he's 4-3 right now, so if he loses, I'll have a 3-game gap over him with 2 weeks left, which means that we would clinch a playoff spot. Otherwise, he just has to lose any. Basically, he has to lose any of the 3 weeks, and I'm in. Or I just have to win next week, and then I'm for sure in as well, which is a little bit crazy, but that's kind of how it works with 10 weeks, is that once I hit 8 wins, it's in for sure. 7 wins is probably in, but 8 wins is in for sure, yeah, so that's kind of how it's going to work for playoffs. We take on Retro and the Universal Umbreon next week. Retro is 3-4 right now, fighting for a playoff spot over in Courtney. He's in a tie for 5th place right now. So he'll be fighting really hard for a playoff spot, especially in week 9 here. But I'm going to definitely be playing my heart out for a playoff spot as well. It seems very unlikely that Retro and I will potentially match up in any playoff matchups. So I'm going to build the best team that I possibly can. And then week 10 is going to be a me match against Aaron. Regardless of where the standings go, I would think probably. Just because of how likely it is that Aaron and I would match up either in round 1 or round 2 of playoffs, I don't really want to bring my ideal build against him. Funnily enough, he'll be the only coach that I could potentially go up against in playoffs that wouldn't have played my or that will have played my Sand. Since I picked up Sand, Jed and Aaron are going to be the only 2 people that I could play in playoffs, besides Retro, I guess, as well, that would be able to play Sand. And now Jed is actually eliminated from playoffs because he's now 1-7, and Zach is 4-3 with 3 weeks to go. So, or sorry, with 2 weeks to go for Jed. So Jed can't hit 4 wins. Highest wins he can hit is 3, which means he's out of playoffs. Who else? Red the Demon Hog can be eliminated as well this coming week if he loses. And so that's just kind of how it's going to break down. So, yeah, keep an eye out for my match against Retro next week, and I will catch you guys then.